We did Daniel 1 last week, so we're just starting Daniel 2, and we'll just get, I figure, maybe halfway through Daniel 2 this morning. Just some of the things, remember, from last week about Daniel 1. It gave us a lot of background about, why they're there, who's there. So we're going to go over some verses this morning before we ever get into the book. So we'll have that background for us. So in Daniel chapter 2, that's probably one of the most well-known chapters in the Old Testament because it's where Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. Would someone read the first two verses of Daniel chapter 2 for us? The first two verses.
Second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. Then the king gave the command to call the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king.
All right, so there's the background for this verse. We're in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, so we have the time frame for when this happens. And of course, we have this idea that he has dreams, and they were in such a manner, I guess, in such a way that it bothered him so much that he couldn't sleep. And this was quite a dream. And so, this was him and all of Babylon. They were very much into, we talked last week about magicians and sorcerers and astrologers and all of these people. So that was their job. And so that's why he calls them. Come here. He wanted them to tell them his dream. And so the king said to them in verse 3, I've had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to know the dream. So for whatever reason, and the Bible doesn't tell us, he didn't remember his dream. I mean, it could have been just a natural thing for him, or it could have been something God did to him. So he couldn't remember it. But either way, he couldn't remember what he dreamed. The only thing he could remember was that it really, really bothered him. It became a lot of anxiety. So verse 4 starts an unusual part of the Old Testament, because beginning in verse 4 going down through, I think it's verse 28 of chapter 7, this is all in Aramaic, which would have been the language of the Chaldeans, the Babylonians. And so instead of going from Hebrew, which is what everything so far has been in, now it switches to Hebrew. And of course, the reason is because what's happening now is we're having conversations there in Babylon between these Babylonians and Chaldeans. So that's the language they speak. So then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic. And this is where it starts, all being written in Aramaic. And so he says, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, we'll give the interpretation. See, this is what they do. They interpret dreams, supposedly, anyway. And that's what the servants say, okay, give us the dream. We'll tell you what it's about. Won't have any problem. So now, would someone read verses 5 and 6 for us?
The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces and your houses shall be made an ash heap. However, if you tell the dream and its interpretation, you will receive from me gifts, rewards, and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation.
All right, there's the challenge. The challenge is out there for them. Okay, this is what you have to do. Like he says, I'm firm on this. I am not changing my mind. This so bothered him that he knew he had to get the dream, and he knew it was something that was very, very important. And so he says, if you don't give me the dream, you shall be cut in pieces. And in the Hebrew, it talks about, or in the Aramaic, it talks about being severed, severing body parts. This was a very serious thing he was telling them. If you want to live, you had better tell me the dream and its interpretation. And if you do, then there's going to be wonderful things come your way. This is going to be something really good for you. Whoever tells me the dream, whoever tells me the interpretation, it's going to be wonderful for them. So they answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will give its interpretation. All right, they basically, this is what they said the first time. Maybe they thought the king didn't understand them. You've got to tell us the dream. And of course, the king answered and said, I know for certain that you would gain time because you see that my decision is firm. See, they're just trying to buy some time. They're stalling because they don't have any real power. They don't have the power to tell him his dream, and they know that. All of these magicians and sorcerers and astrologers, they know they don't have the power to tell him his dream. They know that. So they're trying to figure out a way to get around that. But it's not working. King says, I know what you're doing. I know you're just stalling. So if you don't make known the dream to me, there's only one decree for you. That's it. And there's no getting around this. This is the way it is. You either tell me the dream or you don't. If you don't tell me the dream, you die. For you've agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time is changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can give me its interpretation.
It's a pretty reasonable request, really.
Well, of course it is. If they're really,
they're supposed to be the real deal,
right? If they claim to really have this power, then they should be able to do it.
Nebuchadnezzar was not stupid.
No, he sure wasn't. No, he knew exactly what they were trying to do, and he was starting to see that they were imposters and charlatans. They were dishonest. Because, he had, like I said, in his court, these people were important. These magicians and sorcerers and so forth. So it was important. And so the Chaldeans came back and say, really, the only thing they can possibly say. So would someone read verses 10 and 11?
The Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore, no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. It is a difficult thing that the king requires, and there is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh.
All right. What they're really saying is, this is something that's extremely rare for a king or anybody to ask for someone else, anybody, to tell what a dream was. Not just interpret it, but tell what it was. And so they're saying only a divine being can do this, which is true. I mean, that is true. Only a divine being could do that. They don't, these people don't have any power to do it. The only one that can do it is God. The only one that can do it. And they're admitting that fact. And yes.
I think that's something that they're admitting, that they don't have a connection with. They're saying God.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't that what their position was?
Yeah, they're saying we really don't have anything.
Yes.
They keep hoping that somehow Nebuchadnezzar will let them off the hook.
If you can tell us what the dream was, we can make up something.
That's right. Yeah, interpreting a dream.
I got nothing.
Yeah. So they keep hoping. They really do. So he says, for this reason, the king was angry. Well, of course he's angry. He's got all these people that are on the payroll, basically, and they're not doing what he thinks their job is. So he's furious and gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. Every single one of them, regardless of where they were in the country. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise men, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. Of course, his companions, they're still in this, I guess you'd call it a training academy, whatever we talked about last week. So they are there, they're in the capital. And so they're on the list to be killed as well. So then with counsel and wisdom, there's Daniel right there. With counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered this Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He was, I guess you might call him, he was kind of an executioner. That's what he was going to do. He was going to go out and kill all of these men because he had been given this decree from Nebuchadnezzar to do that. But Daniel, Daniel's very discreet, very prudent in his dealings. And so he answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree from the king so urgent? Why does this have to happen so quickly? Then Arioch made the decision known to Daniel. So he tells him, why is this so? This seems like Daniel is saying this is a very strict, harsh decree. Daniel wants to know why. Okay, so God is not telling Daniel at this point anything about the decree, because Daniel wants to know what this is about as well. So, what does Daniel do? Verses 16 through 18. If someone read that for us.
So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time, that he might tell the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Ananiah, Mishael, Azariah, his companions, that they might seek mercies from the God of heaven concerning this secret, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon.
All right. Still, Daniel doesn't know how this is going to turn out. They're going to go to the God of heaven, as it says, might seek his mercies. They don't know exactly what's going to happen. But they know the very best thing they can do is get together and pray to God about it. That they know that is the very best thing for them to do. So Daniel goes in and asked the king to give him some time. Because he hadn't had time to get with his companions and pray to God and hear an answer or anything.
How about the fact Daniel had direct access to the king?
Yeah, he was able to go in. Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, that was very huge, especially at that time, to be able to go in and talk directly to a king. And Nebuchadnezzar is the world leader of the world empire. He is the most powerful man in the world at this point. That's a very good point. So what they do is they want to seek mercies from God concerning this matter, because hoping that they would not perish with all the rest of the wise men. So Daniel knew that God knew what the dream was. Daniel was confident that God knew the dream. He wasn't confident that God was going to tell him the dream, at least not yet. So he knows God is capable. He knows God has the power, and that God has access to the dream. He just doesn't know how it's going to end yet. So then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. So Daniel is told. Daniel, through this vision, is revealed the secret. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven. See, the vision of Nebuchadnezzar was known to God. God knew it. And so now God is revealing this secret to Daniel, and Daniel praises God for it. All right, now would someone read 20 and 21 for us?
Daniel answered and said, Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding.
Okay. So I think the first thing we need to realize here is that Daniel basically goes to God and says, I know that you're in control of everything. God is in control. Even kings are under his sovereignty. I mean, that's what he's saying. You know, even he removes kings and raises up kings. And of course, we saw that with the northern kingdom, with Assyria, how God used Assyria and the kings of Assyria and the armies of Assyria to come in and wipe out the northern kingdom and take some of them captive. So Daniel knows that story. He knows what happened to the northern kingdom, so he knows all of that. And he's acknowledging something else here that I think is pretty significant too. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He is acknowledging that everybody's mental faculties, people's mental faculties, are a gift from God. God is the one that blesses people with these mental faculties. God's the one that created man. He's made mankind a certain way. He gives them certain mental abilities. And he goes on, he reveals deep and secret things. Because God knows everything. He reveals deep and secret things. Things that are beyond man's ability without this supernatural intervention. He knows what's in darkness and light dwells with him. So Daniel is saying God knows all of these things. If God chooses to reveal them, then that's up to God. And so he says, I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You've given me wisdom and might and have now made known to me what we ask of you, for you have made known to us the king's demand. So I thank you. The request has been granted. So this is like a follow-up to answered prayer. So Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and thus said to him, Do not destroy the wise men of Babylon. Take me before the king, and I will tell the king the interpretation. Now, this shows a lot about Daniel's character. He could have just went to Arioch and said, I know the dream and its interpretation, so save me and my 3 companions. Let the king kill all the other people. But that's not what he did. He said, Take me before the king. Do not let him destroy the wise men of Babylon. So that was concern over all of these men whom were, at least to some degree, imposters. So he wished to save them all from this wholesale slaughter that was going on. So then Arioch quickly brought Daniel before the king and thus said to him, I have found a man of the captives of Judah who will make known to the king the interpretation. I think this Arioch person, however his name is pronounced, is pretty excited about this. Because he was the one that was going to be in charge of executing all of these astrologers and magicians. So now he has one of these men who says he can do it all. Tell the dream and its interpretation. So the king answers and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Are you able to make known to me the dream which I have seen and its interpretation? Are you able to do this? So Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret which the king has demanded, and he reminds the king, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king. He just reminds them, all of these other people who you employ can't do it. But, and here is another important point about this whole thing, there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets. And he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head upon your bed were these. All right, and that's where we're going to stop. But so Daniel is saying, it's not me. It's not my wisdom that's giving you the dream and its interpretation. It is the God in heaven, the real God. He says there is a God in heaven who is able to do this. All of these, the wise men and astrologers who worshiped all of these different so-called gods, they couldn't do it because those were false gods. But Daniel says there's a real God who knows everything, who knows the deepest and darkest secrets. He knows all of your dreams and all of your visions. So he's giving God all the credit. And he says your dream is about what's going to happen in the latter days. And so this is something this dream has repercussions that were going to last for hundreds of years. Not just what's happening now, but what's going to happen for centuries in the future. So your dream, he's telling them, is huge. It's an incredible dream that you're having. So when we go to our go ahead, Doug. Sorry.
I just wanted to say, I think that's a good point that Daniel gives God all the credit. That's the difference in him and all these other. They were probably wise men.
Mm-hmm.
They probably knew a lot of things but they didn't give credit to God.
Mm-hmm.
Their wisdom they claim for themselves.
Yeah, very true. So when you look at our book,
there's a lot to unpack in that.
Oh yeah.
He evidently had a relationship with Ariok.
Mm-hmm.
Ariok didn't want to kill him.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that it was Daniel that Ariok did not want to kill.
Probably, yeah.
And Daniel had direct access to the king, and he didn't ask Ariok to do that. He told him to do that.
Yeah, go to the king.
Yeah, go to the king. So there's a lot
there. He respected Daniel to the point where he did exactly what Daniel
said.
Yeah.
He did it quickly.
Yeah, oh yeah. He wanted to get it done quick.
There's just an awful lot there.
Mm-hmm. The first two questions in the book, and then we'll stop there. Why did God choose Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon as the medium through whom this great dream was revealed, which summarized the ages to follow? It doesn't really, the Bible doesn't really say why God chose Nebuchadnezzar over anything else other than Nebuchadnezzar was the world leader. I mean, he was the most powerful man in the world at this time. He led the most powerful kingdom in the world. And the dream that he has starts with him. Him and his kingdom is the first part of this vision that he has. And I think that has a lot to do with why the vision comes now and to whom it comes. And, the fact that he couldn't remember it, this is question number 2. Why might God have kept Nebuchadnezzar from remembering the dream? I think it was a test for the wise men. Because the wise men, they could come up with an interpretation, whether it was right or not.
Make something up.
Yeah, but as far as the dream itself, they couldn't do it. And so I think it was a big test. It showed to Nebuchadnezzar that these wise men and astrologers and soothsayers and all the others didn't have access to divinity, to a divine being. If they really did have access, they could have told him the dream. So this is how God is showing greatness, power, is this one individual in the entire kingdom was able to do something that all these other people couldn't. And that was a real telling point in what's going to happen. So, all right.
Validated himself.
Yes.
The strongest man on the planet.
Yeah, validated. That's a good word for what's going on. Well, Lord willing, we'll get into the vision next week, which is an incredibly important vision, and we will go from there.